Friends, I have a question for you. If I told you that a country spent billions of dollars to build a steel wall in the sky, a wall designed specifically to stop the most powerful air force on the planet, and then, in the most critical moment of its history, that wall simply vanished into thin air, would you believe it? This is exactly what just happened. The news of the regime change in Venezuela has exploded across the globe like a thunderclap in the middle of the night. We saw the images of American special forces moving through Caracas as if they were walking through their own backyard. We saw the extraction of Nicolas Maduro from the heart of his power base. But while the world is fixated on the political drama and the fate of one man, the real story, the story that has military strategists and defense officials in capitals around the world sweating cold sweat, is not about the politician. It is about the machine. I am talking about the S-300 VM. This is the system that was supposed to be the ultimate shield. This is the system that military experts told us was the antidote to American air superiority. For years, we were told that this Russian-made beast, known by the NATO codename SA-23 Gladiator, was invincible. It was bought with the blood and sweat of a nation's economy, costing billions of hard-earned dollars. It was designed to track dozens of targets simultaneously, to engage aircraft hundreds of kilometers away, to turn the sky into a no-fly zone for anyone foolish enough to test it. Yet, when the helicopters arrived, when the transport planes hovered over the presidential palace, when the entire operation unfolded with surgical precision, the S-300 did absolutely nothing. It did not fire a single missile. It did not lock on to a single target. It did not even turn on its radar. It sat there, a silent billion-dollar pile of metal, watching its masters being taken away. This is not just a failure. This is a catastrophe of military logic. This is the moment where the rubber meets the road, and the road has collapsed. So today, friends, we are going to ignore the superficial headlines. We are going to dig deep. We are going to peel back the layers of this mystery to understand what really happened in the dark skies over Caracas. We are going to look at the terrifying reality of modern electronic warfare, the brutal constraints of geography, the hidden war of supply chains and software backdoors, and the ultimate fragility of the human element. Listen closely, because what I am about to tell you will completely rewrite your understanding of modern warfare and national security. First, we must destroy a myth. Many people think that the S-300 in Venezuela was just some old junk sold to a third world country. That is completely wrong. This was the S-300 VM, the Ante-2500. In the world of air defense, this is a predator. It was designed specifically to counter ballistic missiles and modern cruise missiles. It is mobile, mounted on tracked vehicles, capable of moving through rough terrain and setting up in minutes. On paper, it is a beast. The theoretical range covers the entire coastline. If you believe the brochures, nothing should have been able to touch the Venezuelan coast without triggering a massive response. But the reality is that the American aircraft flew in, landed, and flew out, and the system remained dead. Why? To understand this, we have to enter the first layer of the truth, the dark forest of the electromagnetic spectrum. This is where the real war is fought, long before the first bullet is fired. You see, most people have a World War II understanding of radar. They think you turn on a switch, a beam goes out, hits a plane, comes back, and you shoot. Simple, right? Wrong. In the modern era, turning on a high-power radar like the one on the S-300 is tantamount to suicide. The S-300 VM uses a massive engagement radar known as the grill pan. It is a masterpiece of brute force engineering. The design philosophy is simple. If the enemy uses electronic jamming, you build a radar so powerful it burns through the jamming like a spotlight through fog. But here is the catch, and it is a deadly one. In the pitch-black darkness of a modern battlefield, a radar is like a man standing in a dark field holding a massive searchlight. Yes, when you turn on that light, you might see the enemy. But the moment you flip that switch, every single person for hundreds of miles sees you. You become the brightest thing in the universe. The American forces did not just send helicopters. Before a single rotor blade turned, the sky and space were already filled with electronic eyes. Satellites in orbit, reconnaissance aircraft at high altitude, and ships off the coast were listening. They were waiting for a specific frequency. They were waiting for the unique electronic fingerprint of the grill pan radar. If the Venezuelan operators had touched that power button, if they had emitted even a pulse of energy, an anti-radiation missile would have been in the air seconds later. These missiles are designed to ride the radar beam back to its source. It is a mathematical certainty. You transmit, you die. Imagine the psychological pressure on the operator inside that vehicle. You are sitting in a metal box. You know that the sky is full of invisible hunters. You know that the enemy has weapons specifically designed to turn your vehicle into a crater the moment you try to do your job. Did they fail to detect the intrusion? Or were they simply too terrified to turn on the machine? This is the concept of a soft kill. You don't need to blow up the radar if you can terrify the operator into keeping it turned off. The Americans utilized massive electronic suppression capabilities. They can flood the screens with white noise, create hundreds of ghost targets, or simply wait for a transmission to launch a kinetic strike. In that long night, the silence of the S-300 was not a malfunction, it was a survival instinct. But friends, there is a second layer to this mystery, one that is written in the earth itself. Geography is a cruel mistress in war. We look at a map and we see Caracas near the sea. We think, perfect field of fire. But look closer. Look at the topography. Between the city and the ocean stands Mount Avila. It is a massive wall of rock. To a tourist, it is beautiful. To a radar operator, it is a nightmare. Radar beams travel in straight lines. They do not curve around mountains. This creates a massive blind spot, a shadow behind the mountain where the radar cannot see. The American pilots from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment are not normal pilots. They are masters of the dark. They train to fly at what they call nap of the earth. They fly so low the landing gear is brushing the treetops. They fly through canyons using the rock walls to mask their approach. They utilize the curvature of the earth to hide from long-range sensors. For a system like the S-300, which is designed to kill high-altitude bombers and missiles, a helicopter hugging the terrain is the hardest target in the world. It is like trying to hit a mosquito with a sledgehammer while the mosquito is hiding under the carpet. By the time you hear the sound of the rotors, by the time your short-range sensors pick them up, they are already on top of you. The S-300 has a minimum engagement range. If the target is too close, the system is useless. It is a long-range sniper rifle, and the enemy walked up and put a knife to its throat. Now, let's go deeper. Let's talk about the things that are never discussed in the brochures. The third layer is the hidden war of code and supply chains. We have to ask the uncomfortable question, was the system compromised from the inside? We know that major powers export weapons in two versions. There is the version they keep for themselves, and there is the monkey model they sell to others. The export versions often lack the most sensitive frequencies, the most advanced countermeasures, and the most sophisticated identification algorithms. But it goes beyond just downgraded hardware. In the world of modern cyber warfare, is it possible that the Americans had the keys to the system? The identification friend or foe system, the IFF, is the gatekeeper. It tells the computer who to shoot and who to let pass. If American intelligence agencies, arguably the most capable in the world at signals intelligence, had managed to clone the IFF response codes used by the Venezuelan military, the result would be catastrophic. The American aircraft would appear on the radar screens not as enemies, but as friendly local traffic. The computer would mark them as safe and inhibit the firing sequence. This is the ultimate backdoor. You don't need to destroy the wall if you have the key to the gate. Given the level of penetration we have seen in intelligence operations recently, the idea that the S-300's logic was spoofed is not science fiction. It is a highly probable tactical reality. And then, friends, we arrive at the fourth layer, perhaps the most tragic of all, the human element. A weapon system is only as good as the organization that runs it. The S-300 is not a rifle you pick up and shoot. It is a complex ecosystem of logistics, maintenance, and coordination. It requires hundreds of highly trained technicians working in perfect synchronization. But look at the state of Venezuela over the last few years. The economy has been in free fall. Hyperinflation has destroyed the currency. When you cannot buy bread, when you cannot buy medicine, can you buy the specialized spare parts needed for a billion-dollar radar system? Liquid cooling systems leak. Vacuum tubes degrade, hydraulic seals rot. If you miss a maintenance cycle, the system efficiency drops. If you miss 2, it becomes unreliable. If you miss 3, it is just a scary-looking truck. And what about the morale of the troops? When a soldier is worried about whether his family is eating tonight, is he going to be 100% focused on his radar scope at 3 a.m.? Corruption and neglect are the rust that destroys the sharpest sword. It is highly likely that on that night, critical components were broken and there were no spares, or perhaps the crew was under strength, or perhaps, seeing the overwhelming force arrayed against them, seeing the writing on the wall, the commander simply decided that resistance was futile. Why die for a lost cause? Why turn on the radar and invite a missile when the outcome is already decided? The collapse of the system was likely psychological and logistical long before it was tactical. Furthermore, we must look at the failure of the system of systems. A heavy SAM like the S-300 cannot fight alone. It is designed to be the goalkeeper, but you need defenders in front of it. You need airborne early warning aircraft to look down from above and see behind the mountains. You need short-range point defense systems like the Tor or Pantsir to protect the S-300 from low-flying threats and anti-radiation missiles. You need fighter jets to intercept the intruders before they get close. Venezuela bought the goalkeeper, but they didn't have the rest of the team. They lacked the airborne radar to fill the gaps caused by Mount Avila. They lacked a cohesive, integrated network that could share data instantly. The Americans knew this. They didn't attack a system. They attacked a collection of isolated, blind, and deaf units. They threaded the needle through the gaps in the coverage. They exploited the lack of mutual support. This proves once again that you cannot buy a modern air defense system off the shelf. You have to build it, integrate it, and maintain it. Buying the hardware without the network is like buying a high-end smartphone and having no internet connection. It looks nice, but it doesn't work. This event is a wake-up call that should be ringing in the ears of defense ministers across the globe. It shatters the illusion that buying advanced Russian or any foreign hardware is a magic wand for sovereignty. The era of the magic weapon is over. We have entered an era of systemic warfare. The Americans demonstrated a capability that is terrifying in its completeness. They integrated space-based surveillance, cyber warfare, electronic suppression, and special operations into a single, fluid motion. They didn't just defeat the S-300, they rendered it irrelevant. They turned a multi-billion-dollar investment into a spectator. Think about the implications for the global arms market. This is a commercial disaster for Russian exports, yes, but more importantly, it is a strategic lesson for everyone else. If your defense relies on a system that your potential adversary has studied for 30 years, a system whose manual they have translated, whose frequencies they have recorded, and whose tactics they have practiced against in the deserts of Nevada, then you do not have a defense. You have a target. The concept of anti-access/area denial that has been so popular in military journals has just taken a massive hit. The shield is not impenetrable. In fact, against a foe with total dominance of the electromagnetic spectrum and the information domain, the shield is transparent. The silence of those S-300 batteries in Caracas is louder than any explosion. It tells us that the future of war is not about who has the biggest missile tube. It is about who controls the data. It is about who can hide in the electronic noise. It is about who can paralyze the enemy's mind and machine before the first shot is fired. The Venezuelan military thought they had bought a fortress. In reality, they were sitting inside a glass house, and the enemy had a hammer. So, when you look at the images of that night, do not just see a political change. See the death of an old way of thinking. See the brutal efficiency of dimension reduction warfare. The S-300 didn't fail because it was broken. It failed because the game changed, and it was still playing by the old rules. The Americans didn't just sneak in, they dismantled the entire logic of the defense. They exploited the physics of the mountain, the physics of the radar wave, the weakness of the code, and the frailty of the human spirit. This is the cold, hard truth that no one wants to admit. You can spend billions on iron, but if you don't master the invisible spectrum, if you don't secure your supply chain, if you don't feed your soldiers and maintain your gear, you are just building expensive monuments to your own vulnerability. The events in Caracas are a masterclass in modern warfare, a lesson written in silence and executed in the shadows. And for those watching carefully, for those who truly understand the mechanics of power in the 21st century, it is a lesson that chills the bone. Because if a fortress like that can fall without a whimper, what else is vulnerable? What other invincible systems are just one electronic command away from becoming scrap metal? Friends, the world is changing faster than we can comprehend. The old certainties are dissolving. The idea that you can buy security is a lie. Real security comes from mastery, from independence, and from the ability to adapt faster than your enemy. Venezuela learned this lesson the hard way. The S-300 is still there, sitting on its tracks, its radar antennas pointing at the silent sky, blind witnesses to a new era of war. It stands as a warning to everyone. In the face of a true technological predator, complacency is a death sentence. That is the real secret behind the headlines. That is the truth they won't tell you on the evening news. Think about it, analyze it, and realize that in this game of high-stakes poker, if you don't know who the mark is, it's you. This is the reality of the world we live in, a world where the most powerful weapons are the ones you never see, and the most devastating attacks are the ones that happen in silence. The Venezuelan night was dark, but for military strategists, it was a blinding flash of revelation. The question now is, who else is learning this lesson, and who is destined to repeat the mistake? I'll leave you with that thought. Being awake in a sleeping world is a burden, but it is the only way to survive. Thank you for listening.